I was teaching a class today. It was a small class, diversifying your practice inside and out, with your appraiser hat on, with your appraiser hat off. And we had some interesting folks in the room today. I had one in particular that kind of jumped out to me, got my attention, and I'd like for you to meet him. So stick around. When we come back, we'll meet my special guest. Hi, this is Bryan Reynolds. You're listening to the Appraisal Update Podcast, brought to you as always by the fine folks of Appraiser eLearning. I'd like to thank my sponsor for continuing the support of the Appraisal Update Podcast, LIA Administrators and Insurance Services. Thank you for your support of the Appraisal Update Podcast. And without further delay, I'd like to bring my guest in, Mr. Gregory Shapiro. Greg, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Bryan.
Well, I'm glad you decided to spend a couple of minutes with us. We were together earlier today, and you were able to set aside some time, and we carved out some time to get back together. So before we jump in the subject matter, why don't you let my guests know a little bit about Mr. Gregory Shapiro?
Well, I started appraising in Seattle. I've been appraising 45 years, full-time appraising. And in Seattle, when I started out, there was no licensing. You literally could just say, I'm an appraiser, and print up a card, and you were an appraiser. But you wouldn't get any work unless you were approved by a lender or on Fannie Mae's approved appraiser list. So, over the last 40 years, I've watched the business model that was in effect then be changed. And back then, there was basically no technology. I mean, there were no personal computers, there were no cell phones. Sometimes things were done with pencil on reports. Mm-hmm. Over time, things started progressing and technology came into play. But over the last 60 years, the business model for the appraiser has changed very little. The only real change that impacted appraisers dramatically was when they introduced the middle layer. Instead of being directly hired by your lender, now there's a third party in the middle, which was the formation of the appraisal management company.
Yeah.
And as that started out, there were pluses and minuses. The pluses were the appraisal management companies had volume of work. The minuses were that their demands on you in terms of time and the fee you would get were, very irritating.
Yeah, to say the least, yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think, and let me pause you right there, two things. Number one, for any of my listeners or viewers, Fannie Mae no longer approves appraisers. Okay, that was way back when, right? And so Fannie Mae does not have an approved appraiser list per se. Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, they hold the lender responsible for appraisals and appraisers, right? So that's really going back a ways, Greg, on that. But I want to make it very, very clear to the listeners or viewers that there's no Fannie Mae list that you can get on today. Okay, so that's one thing. And then you've jumped to the AMC. So let's just talk about that. AMCs have been around really a long time, but I always think of the breeding ground for AMCs was, after the Wall Street Reform and Consumer Protection Act, right? And that came online after Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, HVCC, which was going to sunset, it was going to go away.
Right.
And then they passed, commonly known Dodd-Frank. It's the Wall Street Reform and Consumer Protection Act. And it, as you were talking about, it creates that insulator between loan production and appraisers, and it was a selling ground for AMCs to say, hey, hire us and we'll do it for free because we'll take money out of the appraiser's pocket.
Right.
and you can get rid of a staff. But banks can actually do it without AMCs if they want to. But let me
Correct.
ask you this, because this has always been a kind of a sore topic for appraisers, AMCs and appraisers. Do you think that it's gotten better, the relationship between appraisers and AMCs over the years, or have AMCs kind of stopped bugging appraisers to the extent that they did early on in the process? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think, for me personally, the thing that's irritating about some AMCs is you get these nonstop, do you want to bid on this process? And do you want to, what's your fee and turn time on this assignment if we give it to you?
Right, right.
And so theoretically, the appraiser that's most competent is supposed to be picked for the assignment.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the problem with that is they never check the qualifications and see, well, this person's only done one manufactured home in 10 years, and this other person who wants $100 more has done 50.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, that just kind of went by the wayside. No one talks about it. And the AMCs just keep going down the road doing it their way. And that is part of the insulation of having an AMC. This allows the lender to not get in the middle of that anymore. And I think that's one reason they wanted the AMC. So there are some things that are beneficial to AMCs for sure. They have usually very good delivery platforms. So that burden is not on us to deliver that to the AMC. And we don't have to deal with the lender and going over issues they have. All of that's handled between us and the AMC. And usually they have appraisers anytime there's an issue that you can talk to. So
Mm-hmm.
there are some benefits, um, but the bigger issue is that the advancement of technology really has not come from the AMCs. It's all independent of them, and the technology is marching ahead at such a rapid rate that now pretty much any lender can piece together all of this themselves and have a better structure than using an AMC.
Hmm.
So the business model, though, has stayed the same. The business model for a person typically is they start their own appraisal business and they do every function in that business as part of the business model.
Yeah, yeah.
So when they get busy, they can't service the work either in terms of turn time or a reasonable fee. So that's really, I think, one of the holding out points for many appraisers is they see that fee as their net worth.
Yeah.
And they don't look at it as, well, how much time do I spend doing all these other things that I wouldn't be doing anymore? And when I used to hire appraisers in Seattle, it was the same thing. They would come in to interview and they say, well, this guy is offering to pay me 60% split and you're only offering to pay me 50. He said, yeah, but are you going to have a full-time assistant that pulls up all of this information for you, makes your appointments, does everything? I don't care. I'm not taking a pay cut.
Yeah, let's talk about that for a minute because, and I don't want to get too deep in the weeds with regard to fees. We can't for various
I'll talk
reasons we
about
can't go there. But um, you said right before we started recording,
that.
you want, and I know you've started here, but you said you wanted to talk about the broken appraisal business model,
Right.
right? And just for my viewers and my listeners, I told Greg, don't tell me yet. I want to do it. I want to do it real time. So I don't know what he's going to say. You don't know what he's going to say. He doesn't know what I'm going to ask him. Quite frankly, I don't know what I'm going to ask him until it pops into my head. But I thought that was interesting. And again, Gregory's been around for 45 years. He's been in the appraisal profession for 45 years. And so I assume, Greg, you started on a typewriter or even before that, maybe handwriting appraisal reports. Is that
You
fair?
know, when I started out doing FHAs, it was a one page form and you filled it out with a pencil.
Okay. All right. So
And
you've been around a minute. You've been around a minute from
you would
filling out.
draw a sketch on a sketch pad with a pencil, freehand the best you could,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
that's it.
And
Uh,
that became part of your report. So let's dive into this. My point of saying that is you've seen a lot, right? You've been in this business before licensing. You
right.
hand wrote a 1-page form and sketched it out on a sketch pad to where we're at today. I know you're not doing that today.
Mhm.
You said broken appraisal business model.
Right.
Talk in detail a little bit about what you mean by that.
Okay.
And is there a way to repair the model or create a new model that isn't broken? That's what I want to hear
Right.
from you.
Well, the first thing I think an appraiser who owns their own business or any appraiser really should do, even if they're working for another company, is to go through and break down everything they do, whether it's marketing to try and get more business, accounts receivable, trying to hound clients to get paid, uh, hiring people, firing people, um, and just the basic research that's done on every single file. So you go through all of these steps on a piece of paper, and let's say there's 15 steps. And the old business model was the appraiser did everything. Then to become efficient, it was okay, well, you hire typists. Computers came out, and I can remember a lot of appraisers refused to use computer software because they said it takes the same amount of time as them doing it by hand typing. And of course, what they were overlooking is you're leaving to go out the door, and a lender sends in a request for a change on your appraisal for a typo. Well, pretty hard to go retype that report when you can just instantly do it on your computer and send it and it's gone.
Yeah. Good.
So, yeah, so if you look and do an inventory of how much of my time is spent on all these different tasks, and then to the right of that, do an honest valuation of how much do I enjoy doing that task. And if you find I only enjoy doing the inspection, I only enjoy doing the valuation, now you're starting to get to the point of all these other things I really don't care about. I'm not that efficient at, and I don't make very much money doing any of those. So then you start applying that same analysis to working for another company, and take out what they do. You add up everything they do and see what the fee split is and say, is it worth $150 in appraisal for them to do all that for me?
Mm-hmm.
So the big advance in technology, one of the big advances, there have been many, one of the big advances in technology is we now can do team appraising. And before, when you had teams doing work, everyone had to be in the same physical location. Now you don't have to do that. I can have a remote assistant who pulls up the files, enters them in a database system for me, creates all that other stuff. They aren't even here where I'm at. So the technology came in to allow us to have remote workers, and we all can be a team, a remote team based on technology. And that's a big plus. I've used that for years. But even more so now, we're getting to the point with the team technology that you say you like to go out and do the appraisal and write it up and all the other stuff you don't like. But how efficient is it for you to really do that? I mean, what is it you really enjoy doing? Is it the analysis or is it the inspecting part? And then, the push now is they're trying to take away pieces from that business model that you do. The first one they're trying to take away is someone else is going to go out and do the inspection for you. And there are a lot of people that say, there's no way I would accept that. I don't want to be liable for what they do or miss. And that definitely is an area that needs improvement. Because, when we do an appraisal, we get that property data report from them. It's still all on our shoulders to review that and decide, is this correct and credible? And if it isn't, then we have to go back and play back and forth with them to get it fixed. That becomes a problem because you're playing back and forth with an AMC, and they're playing back and forth with whoever did that property data inspection. So that's a disadvantage of doing a semi-team approach through an AMC.
Yeah.
Much better to have a company that you work for where all the people are employees and that team is all under one roof. And you can get instant answers if you need to any of that. So the technology for being able to communicate back and forth, to work in files simultaneously, it's all there today. It takes the procedures that make sure it's credible, even when all the pieces come together. It's still got to be credible and defendable, but that technology is here today that you can do that with team appraising. You have to have procedures and you have to have the right technology to do it. And, a lot of appraisers say, well, I have fine appraisal volume, so I don't see any reason to do that. Well, the problem with that is you think you have a lot of volume, but what if I told you your client's sending 70% of their work to people that are doing it the new way? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And pretty soon they're going to send 80 or 90%, and then you're going to be sitting there with, why is it so slow? And the market's not slow.
Right.
You're going to be stuck in that situation.
There's certainly a more efficient model than one person trying to do everything. Right. And I've done it both ways, guys. And for those watching and listening, I'm not beating you up if you're a solo practitioner. I've done that probably for more years than I've worked on a team, right? So I'm not, and sometimes, Greg, it's the right thing for that individual. They have a hard time letting go. I know it's right if I do it. I don't want to rely on somebody else, even if they are in the same room. There's others that say, I don't want to hire people because I don't want to be responsible and have to meet payroll or not provide them work if we slow down. And so I like to just, I know a gentleman that worked his whole career in his basement. He'd be up at 6 a.m. and he'd work till 10 o'clock. Don't call him at 10:01 p.m. He's done. But at 9:30, you could call him. He's still working. And that was his model every day, normally 7 days a week. And I just don't want to live my life like that, right? I'm a hard worker. I work 5 jobs right now. I've worked 5 jobs when I was a kid. I'm not afraid of work. I'm a hard worker, but I'm a hard player too. I like to play. I like to take a day off and play. So. Well,
that's kind of the issue is how are you going to have a balanced life if you're a one-man company? Mm-hmm. Very difficult to do because things come in waves, both a lot of work and not enough work. Right. And if you are with a larger company, team concept, where they're working off 80 clients and you're only working off 6, chances are they're going to have more consistent volume than you would have. Mm-hmm. So I think people are starting to get to the point where they just don't think this will affect me. Yeah. So my dad was an airline pilot, and he used to fly the Boeing 747 to Hawaii. And when he started flying that airplane, there were 4 people in the cockpit: the pilot, the co-pilot, the engineer, and the navigator. And each one of those did a function to get that airplane to where they needed it to go. And so like the navigator, must have had 50, 60 different dials he was constantly monitoring. Well, eventually the technology came out. We don't need him to do that. We can run all of that through a little box that does all that, and the pilot will get a notification if something's wrong. Bang, he's gone. Now they're down to 3 in the cockpit. Pretty soon, this navigator, and I've been in the cockpit when they do this, the old way, they use some kind of system. They have a place where they look up through this device in the ceiling of the 747, and they're checking the alignment with the stars and seeing exactly where they are. Well, as soon as GPS came out, goodbye to that person. Now you've got 2 people in the cockpit.
Yeah.
So fast forward to these military tankers that refuel all of our jet fighters. There's 2 people in the cockpit and a boom operator in that airplane. Well, the problem the Air Force has is they can't find enough qualified pilots. So their solution, eliminate the co-pilot. So I'm the tail boom operator. I'm saying, well, wait a minute. What happens if something happens to the pilot, right?
Right.
They have the technology now where you push one button and the computer will take over the entire airplane. It'll send an emergency code to the ATC telling them there's an emergency. It will plot the closest airport that has a runway long enough for this aircraft, and they have enough fuel to get there. And it will change course and land the airplane to a full stop.
Wow. That's incredible. Technology. Wow. That's
so they have that technology. They've already tested it with just one pilot and one boom operator. Well, now all of a sudden, again, thinking through, the Air Force needs pilots so we can have as many of these tankers flying as possible. Well, now they've just doubled the number of aircraft that can be in the air at any one time.
Mm-hmm.
And so coming back to the team concept, you have a pool of people that can do that inspection at your company. You have a pool of people that pull the data, log in the report. If one of them is sick that day, there's other people in the pool because that position is all automated by our procedures and the technology we use.
You don't have to close down your operation for a day just because one person is out. Hold that thought right for 1 second. I do want to talk not only about teams and people, I want to also talk about technology. I asked a question today, who's using technology out in the field, and only one person raised their hand. And when we come back, we'll talk about who that one person was. I do want to thank my sponsor, LIA Administrators and Insurance Services, for their sponsorship of the Appraisal Update podcast for 45 years. Just like Gregory, for 45 years, LIA has been offering E&O insurance to valuation professionals just like you. LIA provides superior customer service, exceptional liability education, and unparalleled claim defense to serve 10,000 plus real estate professionals nationwide. They offer commercial bonds, general liability, cyber liability, and a whole host of other products. Check out LIA Administrators and Insurance Services at liability.com to learn more about how LIA can protect you and your business. All right, Gregory. So during our class today, I asked a question. I said, I'd like to have a show of hands of how many of you use an iPad or a tablet or some sort of electronic data collection device out in the field. And we had one hand raised. Mm-hmm. And whose hand was that?
Mine.
It was yours. So, and I normally don't see that from somebody that's been in this game for 45 years. So talk about that. We've been talking about the teams, and we're running a little short on time. But talk about technology and how you use that in your business to benefit you.
Well, I grew up with a father who always was checking out the latest new thing that was coming out and how could he use it. So that was kind of ingrained in me. But in terms of appraisal technology, the first wave that really was a big productivity gain was going to computers,
Hmm.
uh, going to network computers, but that still required everyone to be in the office. Now we have all of these networking we can do to all these remote sites to work on this appraisal for us. So that's a big plus. Um, the other thing is, since I started appraising, the government's come in with USPAP, and there's a lot of overlays on the quality of work you do, how you do the work, and then how you document that you did that. So anything that can automate our process and allow us to build a better work file to prove that we did all that is a big plus. So I used to use an appraisal or software company, and I noticed this other company, which is Alamode, had this app called Total for Mobile.
Hmm.
And I saw a video of it, and it sounded too good to be true. But I started seeing all the people who left reviews of it, said it totally changed how they did appraising. So I said, I'm going to try that for 30 days. So I did. First 30 days, it didn't save me noticeable time, but it's made it so much easier to do the appraisal when I got back in the office. So over time, of course, it has saved me a lot of time. So I started changing with that. Then the other thing I was looking for, because you go to all the seminars on quality control and E&O insurance and all of that, and you realize the people that are reviewing my appraisals, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, FHA, VA, they all have better analytics tools than I have. How do I stand up to that? Uh, so I started researching different things. First, I tried Jeff Bradford's Redstone technology, which was very good. Data Master is very good. Then I ended up with Spark because it provided so much data in an organized way, gave me flexibility in doing it, and the documentation all went into the work file on the appraisal. So I use those kinds of tools to cut down the amount of time it takes to actually document what you're doing and prove you did do it. The problem for small 1 and 2 man companies is they get in a hurry, and if they don't use these kinds of tools, they just guesstimate what the adjustment should be, and they have nothing in the work file to prove that.
Hmm.
So I just switched to those. I said, the time it takes to learn this isn't that much. The big point is, as you start doing the next technology, your mind expands so that each new technology isn't that hard to adapt to. It's
Yeah.
the first one that's hard.
Yeah, just overcoming that initial hump.
Right.
Gregory, thanks so much for being here. We're running out of time. I do have one final question, and again, you've been at this game for a while. 45 years is a minute. You've had to see ups and downs, busy
Mhm.
times, slow times.
Right.
So I want if you can give any words of advice or share some wisdom. We've got some appraisers out there right now that have never in their career experienced a
Mhm.
slowdown. I mean, since they've been certified, it's been busy, 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 busy. And so we've got a lot of folks that are mad, and we've got a lot of folks that are simply scared at this point. I heard a sad story that a appraiser recently lost their home, and is trying to do some review work. Used to do it years ago, and try to come back and do it now, just to try and make some money. And I'm not insulated. My business has taken a big hit, and haven't been able to keep all my people super busy. We're trying to do different things, but if I've got a newer appraiser out there, or any appraiser out there that has experienced a significant slowdown, what words of encouragement or wisdom can you share with them before I let you go?
Well, if you're doing mortgage-only appraisals, you have to realize you're inside the government's business model. The government controls mortgage lending and everyone that provides services that supports mortgage lending. So if the government decides to raise the interest rates, your business is probably going to go away. And it's not a free market reaction necessarily. I mean, when the rates started getting increased, there was very strong demand. It could have kept going even if they only raised them 2 full percentage points. So the business model you're in, which is doing appraisals for government entities, is one that is subject to ups and downs of the market and the government. So diversifying yourself into other niches that aren't subject to that is a way to add more business volume that's more diverse than just mortgage lending. So I would say look into those other avenues.
Yeah, great advice. I tell you, that's what we focused on the last 2 days, and we can't say it enough. There's so many opportunities for appraisers. There's so many opportunities for folks that have the knowledge and skill set of an appraiser. And it seems like we're all in this little bitty box, all trying to fight for the same thing. And there's tremendous opportunity out there. Greg, thanks so much for being here. If one of my viewers or listeners want to reach out to you, do you have an email address you could share where somebody could contact you?
SAS Greg, so SASGREG at iCloud.com.
Great. Thank you very much for being here. I certainly appreciate you carving out some of your busy time to join us.
Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, you've been listening to the Appraisal Update podcast. I hope you're doing well. I hope you're staying safe. I hope you find some ways to make some money. And until next time, for Greg Shapiro, I'm your host, Bryan Reynolds. Happy appraising.
The Appraisal Update podcast is brought to you by Appraiser eLearning.